Here are the 8 signs you're becoming a low-value man, and most men are showing at least 3 without realizing it. Stay until the end, because the 8th sign is what separates men who rebuild their power from men who stay weak forever. Most men don't notice when the erosion begins. They think losing their edge happens all at once, a sudden collapse, a single failure, a bad year. But weakness is quiet. It begins the moment you start needing to be liked more than you need to be respected. The moment you stop fearing mediocrity and start fearing disapproval. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you did something that cost you approval? When was the last time you acted in defiance of the crowd and felt no need to explain yourself? The truth is this, being low value has nothing to do with money, muscles, or women. It's not a lack of wealth, it's a lack of power, internal power. It's the quiet decay of self-respect that happens when a man stops standing on his own judgment. When his mood depends on others, his worth is already for sale. The first sign is the need for validation. A man who needs to be seen cannot lead. Once you depend on eyes to confirm your worth, you've already surrendered the throne of your mind. You've become a performer in your own life, applauded only when you please, forgotten the moment you stop. Validation is the most subtle leash ever invented. You don't feel it tighten until you try to move freely. You see it everywhere. The man refreshing his notifications, adjusting his tone so no one gets offended, explaining himself in circles to people who will never respect him. Every apology that isn't born from honor, every nervous smile meant to buy peace, each one drains him of authority. His spine bends not from fatigue, but from the invisible weight of needing to be liked. The tragedy is that he calls it kindness. He tells himself he's being polite, humble, understanding, but in truth, he is begging for permission to exist. Validation addiction turns men into slaves of mirrors. They start measuring themselves by reflections, by what others project back at them. The crowd becomes the new sovereign. The digital world has made this disease terminal. Each like, each heart, each fleeting sign of approval. It feels like fuel, but it's poison, because it trains your nervous system to depend on the world for peace. Once that happens, your enemies don't need to destroy you, they only need to ignore you. A powerful man terrifies because he does not need witnesses. He speaks, acts, moves without asking to be seen. But the low-value man, stripped of internal validation, withers in silence. He cannot be alone with himself, because silence reveals his emptiness. He craves noise, attention, chatter, company, anything that spares him from meeting his own eyes without applause. When you live for validation, you live for mercy. You stop being dangerous, and a man who is no longer dangerous is no longer free. Think of the kings of history. They didn't need approval, they commanded presence. Their value came from belief, not consensus. Machiavelli once wrote that a prince must desire to be feared rather than loved if he cannot be both, because fear commands respect, but love without respect breeds contempt. The modern man has forgotten this. He trades fear for friendliness, authority for acceptance, power for politeness. And in doing so, he loses the primal respect that makes men listen when he speaks. Look around, men who smile too often, apologize too quickly, seek comfort before purpose. Their eyes dart for reaction before they finish a sentence. They have already submitted. They have already sold their masculine essence for the illusion of belonging. This decay doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly through your gestures, through the way you text, the way you hesitate, the way you ask if something is okay before acting. It shows in how quickly you bend to keep peace, how easily you betray your standards to avoid tension. A man becomes low value the day he starts negotiating his principles for comfort. The validation seeker believes he's winning because people like him. But approval is the cheapest currency. It costs nothing for others to give and everything for you to need. Every time you need to be told you're enough, you confess that you don't believe it. Every time you chase compliments, you admit that your reflection means more than your reality. And so you slowly become ornamental, admired but not respected, noticed but not needed. A decoration in other people's stories, never the author of your own. You want to know what happens when this habit becomes a way of life. You begin performing your masculinity. Everything becomes an act, your confidence rehearsed, your opinions tailored, your voice filtered through fear. You think you're being smart, diplomatic, adaptable, but you're being domesticated. Society praises this kind of man, the agreeable, the flexible, the unthreatening, but this praise is hollow. It's given by those who secretly despise him for lacking edge. They may smile at him, but they never follow him. And the worst part? He doesn't even notice. He confuses tolerance for respect. He mistakes attention for admiration. He believes he's chosen when in truth he's being used. The world uses men who crave validation because they're predictable. They'll work harder, talk softer, and obey faster, as long as someone is watching. If you want to measure your value, stop counting eyes on you and start counting times you stood alone. Ask yourself, when was the last time you disappointed someone to remain honest? When was the last time you said no without explaining? When was the last time your silence was mistaken for defiance and you let it? That's what makes a man valuable. Not the applause he earns, but the peace he refuses to sell. The high-value man doesn't chase validation because he already validates himself through control of his impulses, his words, his reactions. That's what gives him presence. That's what makes others orbit him, not charm, not looks, authority. A man who does not seek is magnetic. A man who begs is repulsive. Learn the difference before life teaches it to you through humiliation. If you think craving validation is humiliating, the next sign is far worse, because it's invisible even to those who think they're strong. It's the weakness that hides behind ambition, the disease that makes men silently bow to the world while believing they're standing tall. The second sign of a low-value man is the inability to stand alone in conviction. The need to belong so badly that he dissolves into whatever group accepts him. It's not loyalty, it's dependency dressed as brotherhood. He calls it community, but it's camouflage for fear. Because deep down, he's terrified of exile, terrified that if he isn't aligned with a tribe, he will vanish into insignificance. This is the man who echoes the dominant opinion, changes his tone to match the room, and confuses agreement with intelligence. He becomes fluent in conformity, a master at sensing what others want to hear. But every word he says erodes his individuality. You can't be feared or respected when you're indistinguishable from the crowd. The group gives him comfort, but it also becomes his prison. The bars aren't made of iron, they're made of approval. The more he needs it, the less of himself remains. Men like this are easy to spot once you know what to look for. They never speak first, they wait to see which way the wind blows. Their laughter is timed, not natural, but synchronized. They share the collective outrage, the collective joy, the collective mediocrity. And yet, when they are alone, they feel nothing. Their emotions are borrowed from the crowd. It's why social media feels like oxygen to them, without the noise of others. Their inner voice is unbearable. A high-value man can walk through solitude like a king in his own land. A low-value man fears silence because it exposes how shallow his convictions really are. To him, being alone feels like death. But to a man of value, being alone is where his will sharpens. It's where he hears the voice that tells him what to do when no one is watching. The weak man silences that voice because it reminds him how dependent he's become. This kind of weakness hides behind friendship, behind collaboration, behind teamwork. He says things like, "We did this, we decided, we thought," because he no longer remembers how to think without merging into the collective. But you must understand something vital. Belonging is not strength if it costs your sovereignty. Brotherhood only has meaning when every man in it can stand apart and still remain whole. Otherwise, it's not a brotherhood, it's a refuge for men who fear their own minds. History remembers individuals, not committees. Revolutions, discoveries, empires, they were born from solitary minds willing to oppose the majority. Every man who ever built power had to betray comfort to follow conviction. And that betrayal is what modern men fear most. They'd rather be included than right. They'd rather be safe than respected. So they fade into the grey fog of collective thought, applauding one another's obedience and mistaking it for strength. You can tell how strong a man is by how much isolation he can bear before he starts conforming. The man who cannot stand alone will always kneel to survive. He will obey whoever holds the keys to his belonging, his friends, his employer, his family, the algorithm. He will preach about independence while his every decision is calibrated to maintain acceptance. Watch him when pressure rises. He becomes agreeable, apologetic, self-erasing. He says, "I didn't mean it like that," even when he did. He softens his tone, changes his stance, edits his truth, all in the name of harmony. But harmony bought through self-denial is cowardice. Real peace comes from being unmovable in truth, even when it isolates you. The more a man fears exile, the faster he will sell his integrity to avoid it. He'll call it diplomacy, he'll call it adaptation, but it's submission dressed in logic. This disease of conformity isn't just social, it's spiritual. It eats away at the one thing that gives men power, the ability to define reality through their own perception. Once you outsource that to the collective, you no longer see the world, you inherit someone else's vision of it. You become programmable, easily managed. The rulers of history have always understood this. If you can make men afraid of being alone, you don't need to chain them. They'll chain themselves through the need to belong. They'll censor their thoughts, adjust their tone, kill their instincts, all to avoid the pain of being the outcast. But the outcast is the only man who ever truly sees the system. Every strong mind begins in exile. Every sovereign man has been misunderstood. So if your thoughts isolate you, don't panic. That's the price of originality. But if your beliefs always fit neatly into what's popular, you've already lost your individuality. The tragedy is that the low-value man doesn't even notice when he's been absorbed. He thinks he's networking, collaborating, staying connected. But what he's really doing is dissolving. The more connections he builds, the less self he has left. He becomes accessible, predictable, harmless. People like him, but no one fears disappointing him. They know he'll adjust, forgive, rationalize. That's how you know a man's value has dropped. When people no longer calculate the risk of crossing him, you can't be respected if no one fears losing you. So ask yourself, would your silence be felt if you disappeared from a room? Would people shift their behavior if your gaze hardened? Or have you become so accommodating that your presence changes nothing? A man of worth leaves an aftertaste. The low-value man leaves nothing, just a faint impression of compliance. You must learn to love solitude, even when it burns. It's where self-respect is born. You must learn to speak unpopular truths without trembling, because if your tongue only moves with the current, your mind is already drowning. Independence is painful because it demands you lose everything that made you feel safe, approval, recognition, company. But that's the only way to regain your edge. The lion that forgets how to hunt dies even in paradise. So stop seeking comfort in herds. The man who can stand alone commands those who can't. Solitude is the forge where power is made. Isolation is not your enemy, it's your inheritance. Learn to use it before the world convinces you that your silence is a flaw instead of a weapon. If you think conformity is dangerous, the next sign cuts even deeper. It's the quiet surrender of men who still appear ambitious, the subtle slavery of those who think they're chasing purpose when they're really just running from themselves. The third sign of a low-value man is emotional instability disguised as passion. It's the inability to control his inner weather, the constant storm of feelings that dictate his behavior, decisions, and words. He believes his emotions make him real, that his volatility is authenticity. But authenticity without discipline is chaos. You can't build an empire with a man who burns down his palace every time he feels misunderstood. Most men are slaves to their emotional state, calm when praised, furious when ignored, euphoric when admired, broken when rejected. Their entire mood depends on external weather. They confuse movement with progress, reaction with action, and emotion with truth. But emotion is not truth. It's merely evidence of where your power leaks. A man who can't control himself will eventually be controlled by those who can. Emotional volatility makes a man predictable. Once the world knows what triggers you, it owns you. They'll provoke you just to watch you flinch. They'll withhold affection just to see you beg. They'll test your reactions not because they care, but because you've shown them that your composure is negotiable. The low-value man says, "I can't help it, that's just how I am." But that's not identity. That's weakness wearing honesty as a shield. The powerful man doesn't need to suppress emotion. He governs it. He feels everything, but he decides which feelings deserve expression. That's the difference between chaos and command. Emotional discipline is not about being cold, it's about being sovereign. Because when your emotions rule you, every enemy becomes your master, every critic your puppeteer. Watch how the unstable man lives. He builds his day around how he feels. If he's motivated, he works. If he's not, he waits for motivation to return. His relationships are roller coasters, sweet one week, explosive the next. He calls it passion, but it's dependency. He lives in a constant cycle of apology and relapse. And with every repetition, people start trusting him less. They know he's not reliable because he's not consistent. One moment, he's a storm, the next he's a vacuum. You can't follow a man like that. Not in business, not in love, not in life. Power demands predictability. Respect is built on emotional reliability. You can't be respected if people have to guess which version of you they'll meet today. The calm man commands attention because chaos is loud, but composure is rare. The world provokes men to test their control. The insult, the rejection, the humiliation, they are all traps. Not to destroy you, but to reveal how much of you can still be manipulated. When you lash out, you lose twice. Once in dignity, once in perception. The more you react, the more you reinforce others' power over you. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Control of emotion is control of perception, and control of perception is control of the world. A man who stays composed while others rage has already won. His silence becomes threatening, his stillness unnerving, because people can't influence what they can't read. Emotional stability doesn't mean apathy, it means your emotions serve you instead of enslave you. The low-value man explodes when the world doesn't validate him. The high-value man builds in silence until the world bends to his will. Understand this. Emotion is meant to move you, not rule you. A warrior feels fear before battle, but he acts anyway. That's courage, action in spite of emotion, not because of it. The modern man confuses sensitivity with depth, but the two are opposites. Sensitivity reacts, depth absorbs. The man who is deep feels everything, yet remains unmoved until reason commands. He doesn't deny pain, he delays it until it's useful. That's why Stoicism terrifies people. It's not lack of feeling, it's mastery over it. In a culture that rewards outbursts and punishes restraint, composure becomes rebellion. You want to terrify the world. Stay calm when you're expected to crumble. Smile when you're provoked. Think when you're insulted. The crowd feeds on emotional reaction. Give them nothing, and they starve. But how does emotional instability destroy value? Simple. It breaks trust. Power relies on predictability. A man who cannot trust his own emotions cannot be trusted by others. Business partners will avoid him. Women will lose attraction. Friends will walk on eggshells, not because they dislike him, but because they can't rely on him. Emotional unpredictability is exhausting to those around you. It drains the room, infects the atmosphere, and makes others cautious. That's the true cost of emotional weakness. Isolation disguised as victimhood. He says, people always leave me, but they're not leaving, they're escaping, because no one wants to orbit chaos. And the worst part? The low-value man takes it personally. He blames others for abandoning him when in truth, his instability drove them away. To rebuild value, you must first master your internal temperature. When anger rises, slow down. When fear speaks, listen, but don't obey. When sadness comes, observe it like weather. It will pass if you don't feed it. Power isn't about never feeling, it's about never being ruled. Every king has emotion, but not every man has control. Remember, the calm man isn't calm because life spares him. He's calm because nothing external defines him. You can't take away his peace because he doesn't store it in things. His validation doesn't come from applause, and his composure doesn't depend on comfort. He governs his reactions like a monarch governs a kingdom, firmly, strategically, without panic. If you think emotional weakness is destructive, the next sign is far more insidious, because it hides beneath ambition. It's the illusion of progress that keeps men grinding endlessly while their souls quietly rot. The fourth sign of a low-value man is blind ambition without alignment, the restless chase for achievement that conceals a hollow center. He mistakes motion for meaning. He runs because he fears stillness, not because he knows where he's going. You see him everywhere, busy, driven, obsessed, yet empty. He calls it purpose, but it's compulsion. He works himself into exhaustion, convinced that success will silence the voice inside that says he's not enough. But the more he achieves, the louder that voice grows. Because the problem was never a lack of progress, it was a lack of peace. He doesn't realize that when you chase validation through ambition, you're not building an empire, you're running on a treadmill, impressing people who aren't watching. Every goal becomes a drug, and every victory fades too quickly to heal what's broken within. This kind of man worships productivity, but avoids reflection. He fills his calendar, but empties his soul. His days are packed, yet none of it feels meaningful. He wakes up anxious, not inspired, chasing deadlines instead of destiny. Society rewards him for this because he looks successful, and he's easy to manipulate. Give him a title, a raise, a bit of recognition, he'll destroy himself for it. Because he's addicted to external symbols of worth. That's why low-value ambition is so dangerous. It wears the mask of greatness while rotting the spirit underneath. The high-value man, on the other hand, moves with purpose but not desperation. He builds slowly, deliberately, without chasing applause. He doesn't run, he advances, because his ambition is anchored to something internal: principle, mission, alignment. He doesn't need to prove he's winning, he defines what winning means. The low-value man doesn't understand this difference. He believes momentum itself is meaning. He thinks rest is laziness, and silence is failure. He becomes allergic to stillness, because in stillness he meets himself, and he doesn't like what he finds. So he keeps running, telling himself he's grinding, evolving, hustling. But what he's really doing is avoiding reflection, avoiding emotion, avoiding the mirror. The more he avoids, the faster he runs. And this speed gives him the illusion of control. But a man without inner direction doesn't move, he spins. He burns energy without progress, mistaking exhaustion for purpose. And people applaud him because they're spinning too. They call it ambition, but it's shared confusion. It's the blind leading the blind toward burnout. The Machiavellian truth is this: ambition without strategy is just emotional compensation. It's the cry of a man who feels powerless and is trying to prove otherwise through excess effort. He doesn't want mastery, he wants relief. He wants to feel like he matters, but he's trying to earn what can only be embodied. True ambition is calm. It's silent, precise, economical. It doesn't announce itself or beg to be seen. It moves strategically, conserving energy for decisive strikes. The desperate man, however, overexerts. He chases every opportunity, says yes to everything, fears missing out. And that fear, not his ambition, rules him. You can see it in his eyes: constant tension, constant hunger. He's not pursuing success, he's fleeing insignificance. That's why he can't stop, because stopping would mean confronting the truth that he doesn't know who he is without the chase. Every empire that falls does so because of excess. Excess pride, excess ambition, excess expansion without introspection. The same applies to men. When ambition becomes addiction, discipline dies. The man becomes reckless, impulsive, and easy to manipulate. Offer him prestige, and he'll trade his integrity for it. Praise his hustle, and he'll double it, even if it kills him. He tells himself he's doing it for legacy, for his family, for the greater good. But deep down, it's for the mirror. It's for the applause. The low-value man builds monuments to his insecurity and calls it success. But the high-value man builds systems that outlive his ego. His ambition is a tool, not a chain. He uses it to serve his will, not his wound. You can tell the difference between the two by how they handle stillness. The false achiever falls apart when forced to rest. His mind rebels. He needs noise, movement, validation. He feels worthless without progress. But the aligned man can sit in silence and still feel powerful, because his worth isn't tied to output, it's tied to essence. The world tells men that worth is measured by performance, but Machiavelli knew better. The measure of a man is how little he needs to prove himself. The prince who must constantly demonstrate power is already weak. The one who doesn't need to remind others is the one truly feared. That's how life works too. The man who hustles loudly seeks recognition. The man who builds quietly seeks dominion. And this is the trap of modern ambition. It replaces fulfillment with activity. The low-value man confuses fatigue with progress. He says, "I'm tired, so I must be achieving something." But tiredness doesn't mean growth. It means inefficiency. It means your energy is leaking into things that don't serve your highest direction. That's why some men work endlessly and remain unfulfilled, while others move minimally and dominate, because the latter act from alignment, not anxiety. True power doesn't come from effort, it comes from precision. The calmest men often achieve the most, not because they move fast, but because they move with purpose. They've mastered the art of economy, of doing less but achieving more. If you think blind ambition is dangerous, the next sign is even darker, because it hides in plain sight, disguised as love, empathy, and connection. It's the sign that turns strength into dependency, making even the most driven men quietly surrender their power without realizing it. The fifth sign of a low-value man is emotional dependence disguised as love, the tendency to hand over his peace, confidence, and sense of worth to another person, often while believing he's being noble or devoted. He mistakes attachment for connection and sacrifice for strength. You'll hear him say things like, "I'd do anything for her," or "I can't live without him," as though surrendering his autonomy is proof of depth. But when your happiness depends on someone else's presence, you've already built your castle on sand. The low-value man believes he's loving deeply, but he's really begging for identity. He calls it loyalty, but it's need, and need is never respected. Once your emotions are tied to another's validation, you no longer love, you depend. Dependence begins subtly. At first, he simply cares more, checks in more, gives more. It feels good because giving gives him purpose. But when that giving is not returned, his energy turns to resentment. He starts to measure love through reciprocation instead of intention. He starts keeping score, begging quietly for acknowledgement, and calling that communication. But what he's really saying is, please make me feel enough. And that's the hidden tragedy. He believes he's being selfless, when in truth, he's trying to be completed. The more he gives, the less he becomes. He loses his frame, his mission, his detachment. His emotional gravity shifts from his internal world to the external one, where his value now depends on another's mood. One argument can ruin his peace. One message left unread can destroy his day. This is not love. This is psychological slavery wrapped in the language of devotion. A high-value man loves without dependency. His love expands him. It doesn't dissolve him. He chooses to give because it aligns with his principles, not because he's desperate to be needed. The low-value man, however, gives to earn safety. He uses affection as currency, hoping it will buy permanence. But nothing bought through desperation lasts. You can't bargain your way into respect. The moment you overextend emotionally, people sense it. They may not articulate it, but they feel the imbalance, the quiet pleading behind every gesture. And humans, by nature, lose respect for those who need them too much. What starts as attraction turns to suffocation. What begins as romance turns to fatigue. And the man who once wanted to be loved ends up being pitied. You can tell when a man has crossed this line by how quickly he abandons his boundaries. He'll cancel his plans, silence his instincts, and break his routines just to stay close. He'll apologize for things he didn't do, just to avoid distance. Every act of self-betrayal feels justified because he calls it love. But what he's really doing is teaching others how little he values himself. And once that lesson is learned, it can't be unlearned. You never regain the respect you trade for approval. The man who cannot walk away will never be taken seriously, not by the world, not by women, not even by himself. It's not cruelty, it's nature. We only respect what can survive without us. A man who can't stand alone emotionally is not a partner, he's a possession waiting to be owned. The world praises emotional openness, and yes, vulnerability is strength, but only when paired with control. The low-value man exposes his heart before he's earned trust, thinking transparency will create intimacy. It doesn't. It creates leverage. He bleeds too early, and the world learns exactly where to cut. The Machiavellian mind knows that emotional restraint is not coldness, it's strategy. You don't show your heart until you know who can hold it. You don't confess weakness until you've built the power to protect it. The man who cries to be understood before he's understood himself becomes dependent on sympathy instead of respect. And sympathy, no matter how kind it looks, always lowers your perceived strength. You must learn the difference between sharing and surrendering. One builds connection, the other builds captivity. Dependency is the silent assassin of masculine power. It whispers that love should feel like merging, like losing yourself in someone else's world. But the more you merge, the less you exist. Love without individuality becomes consumption. It devours rather than nourishes. And that's why the low-value man never finds peace in relationships. He's not loving, he's escaping. He runs from his own emptiness and hides inside another person's affection. The moment that affection fades, his illusion collapses. He's left with the same void, only deeper. True connection only exists between two complete individuals. Two people who don't need each other to function, but choose each other out of alignment. Dependency kills that possibility because it replaces choice with fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of being unseen, the fear of not being enough without someone else's presence. To rise above this, you must reclaim emotional independence. Learn to enjoy solitude again. Learn to generate peace without needing to be loved. A man becomes magnetic when he can love deeply without attachment. When he can say, I desire you, but I do not depend on you. That sentence terrifies the world because it's spoken by someone who can't be controlled. The low-value man begs for love. The high-value man radiates it. One drains, the other attracts. When your energy becomes self-sustaining, Relationships no longer define your value, they reflect it. That's when love becomes power, not weakness. That's when presence becomes choice, not necessity. And that's when you stop being replaceable. If you think emotional dependency is suffocating, the next sign is far more dangerous, because it's the quiet submission of your will, the invisible obedience to the very systems you think you're rebelling against. The sixth sign of a low-value man is silent obedience to systems, the surrender of personal will to structures that promise stability, approval, or purpose. It's the kind of weakness that hides under the illusion of strength, because on the surface, he looks disciplined, structured, and productive. He goes to work, pays his bills, follows the rules, and keeps his head down. But underneath, he's chained by invisible orders, the expectations of society, the commands of culture, the narratives of authority. He doesn't think, he complies. He doesn't question, he adapts. And he believes this makes him responsible. But obedience without awareness isn't responsibility, it's submission disguised as virtue. He's rewarded for it too. The system loves obedient men because they make no noise and no change. They consume what they're told to want, they chase the goals they're told to chase, and they die believing they've done everything right. This kind of man is easy to spot because he never asks why, he asks how. How to be successful, how to be liked, how to fit in, but never why. Why should I follow this path? Why should I want this? Why is this considered success? His life is a sequence of borrowed instructions. Study this, earn that, marry her, buy this, retire then. He doesn't realize that his entire existence has been prescripted by forces that benefit from his compliance. He takes pride in being realistic, which is just another word for tamed. He calls rebellion foolish because he no longer remembers what rebellion feels like. The wildness that once made him curious, the inner fire that once made him question everything, it's gone, replaced by comfort and predictability. The low-value man has traded freedom for safety, not understanding that safety is just another form of slavery. And yet, he wears his obedience like a badge. He mocks the dreamer, the artist, the dissenter. He says, that's not how the world works, because his own spirit was beaten into practicality long ago. He is efficient but uninspired, productive but purposeless. He obeys systems designed to drain him, convinced that his exhaustion is proof of maturity. He serves hierarchies that do not serve him back. He keeps his opinions soft, his tone polite, his ambition within the limits of permission. He believes he's being smart, strategic, but really, he's become domesticated. The world no longer needs to oppress him. It simply rewards his obedience until he forgets its obedience. That's how most men are broken, not through defeat, but through comfort. A cage with velvet walls is still a cage. The Machiavellian mind sees through this illusion. It knows that power exists only in autonomy. Obedience is useful only when strategic. To follow orders without question is to surrender the one weapon every man is born with: independent thought. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn how to use the laws, not be bound by them. The law exists to control the masses, but the prince exists to master them. The low-value man reverses this. He binds himself willingly to rules never meant for his freedom. He believes morality means obedience. He believes virtue means compliance. But morality without intelligence is weakness. Virtue without discernment is submission. The high-value man understands that systems are tools, not gods. He obeys when it serves him and defies when it doesn't. He bends rules quietly, not out of rebellion, but out of awareness that blind obedience is death of the self. Look around, and you'll see how deep this conditioning runs. Men define success by how well they've been domesticated: a stable job, polite manners, predictable routine. They confuse stillness with peace and obedience with order. But there's no peace in living a life you didn't choose. The modern world is built to domesticate male energy, to drain it, redirect it, and sell it back as convenience. The low-value man doesn't even resist, he's grateful for it. He thanks the system that cages him because it gives him stability, validation, and structure. He doesn't see that every comfort he clings to was designed to weaken him. The high-value man rejects unnecessary comfort because he understands the price: his independence, his primal edge, his will. To keep these alive, he learns to exist within the system without being of it. The difference between discipline and obedience is purpose. Discipline serves a vision. Obedience serves a master. One builds power. The other builds dependency. The low-value man obeys because he fears consequence. The high-value man acts because he understands consequence. One seeks permission, the other grants it. The world belongs to the latter. That's why society trains men to be obedient, because a man who asks permission is easier to own. He'll never rebel, never question, never fight. He'll believe his imprisonment is responsibility, and in exchange he'll receive just enough comfort to keep him quiet. The irony is that this man will look successful on the outside, respected, stable, decent, but inside he feels a dull ache he can't name. That ache is the ghost of the man he could have been. To regain value, a man must learn selective obedience. Obey only what serves your mission. Follow rules until they stop being useful. Question everything, not with loud defiance, but with quiet calculation. A true Machiavellian learns the system like an engineer learns a weapon, not to worship it, but to wield it. You must learn to see through the illusion of control. The world doesn't want you strong, it wants you functional. It doesn't want you sovereign, it wants you predictable. Break that expectation, and you become unpredictable, ungovernable, and therefore powerful. Your job is not to escape the system, but to master it so completely that you can use its weight against itself. That's what separates the obedient from the sovereign. If you think silent obedience is harmless, the next sign is even darker. It's the loss of masculine polarity itself, the quiet feminization of your energy that makes strength feel dangerous and submission feel safe. The seventh sign of a low-value man is the loss of masculine polarity, the quiet softening of his nature until his energy no longer commands respect, only comfort. It begins the moment he starts believing that strength is dangerous and softness is virtue. He learns to mute himself, to apologize for being assertive, to suppress his fire in fear of offending, to confuse emotional intelligence with emotional fragility. Society rewards this. It calls him understanding, modern, emotionally mature. But beneath the surface, he's losing something sacred, the raw, assertive charge that makes a man magnetic. His eyes lose their edge, his words lose weight, and his presence becomes neutral. He's liked, but never followed. He's included, but never respected, because when masculine polarity fades, leadership dies with it. Polarity is what makes energy move. Masculine energy asserts, directs, penetrates reality. Feminine energy receives, nurtures, expands. Both are essential, but a man who abandons his polarity becomes energetically inverted. Instead of leading, he seeks to be led. Instead of deciding, he waits to be guided. He's proud of being agreeable, mistaking weakness for peace. But peace without power is submission. He believes he's evolved beyond aggression, but what he's really done is amputate his instincts. He doesn't understand that aggression is not violence, it's directional force. It's the ability to move the world instead of being moved by it. Without that force, he becomes indecisive, hesitant, reactive. He loses the natural tension that inspires trust. People feel safe around him, but not inspired. He becomes emotionally nice, yet spiritually weightless. Watch how the modern world trains men to suppress their polarity. Every institution teaches compliance, emotionalization, and collective dependence. They want men who overthink instead of act, who feel instead of command. A world built on control cannot risk masculine independence, because a truly masculine man cannot be managed. He will challenge, lead, and destabilize the structure itself. So instead, the system rewards docility, calm, soft-spoken, deferential men who never disrupt the flow. They're given comfort, recognition, and acceptance in exchange for their edge. But every reward you receive for obedience costs you strength. The low-value man takes this trade gladly. He stops lifting heavy things, physically and spiritually. He stops protecting, providing, deciding. He hides behind phrases like balance and communication to excuse his lack of conviction. He no longer commands, he negotiates. He no longer acts, he consults. His masculine core is not dead, it's sedated. Polarity doesn't mean domination, it means certainty. The masculine man knows where he's going, and others feel it without him speaking. His calm is direction, not passivity. He doesn't compete for control because control radiates naturally from his composure. He has opinions and stands by them. He protects those in his care, not because he wants to be praised, but because it's his nature to build order where there's chaos. The low-value man, however, confuses order with oppression. He fears authority because he has none within himself. His strength terrifies him because he's been told it's dangerous. So he becomes safe, harmless, predictable, But there is no respect for harmless men, only tolerance. The world tolerates the weak until it needs to be saved, and then it looks for the strong. You can feel the loss of polarity in the way a man carries himself. His body softens, his speech slows, his posture folds inward. He laughs at himself too quickly, apologizes before he offends, and looks around for reassurance before finishing a thought. His relationships lose tension because his partner can no longer feel his direction. He's not grounded, he's gentle. But gentleness without authority breeds resentment. You can't protect what you fear to lead. Women don't truly desire control. They desire safety in a man's direction. They crave polarity, the stability that comes from a man whose decisions are rooted in clarity. The low-value man replaces this with emotional exchange, believing equality means sameness. But sameness kills attraction. Without polarity, passion dies. Without leadership, respect fades. And without respect, love becomes management, a constant negotiation of feelings rather than a dance between strength and softness. Understand this. Polarity is not about dominance, it's about presence. A man anchored in his polarity doesn't need to prove it. His silence holds more gravity than others' words. His gaze commands attention because it's not seeking it. His energy sharpens rooms because it's focused, not scattered. You can feel it before he speaks. That unmistakable stillness of someone who knows who he is and what he will or won't tolerate. The low-value man thinks power is about control, but true polarity doesn't control, it compels. It's magnetic. It bends reality quietly because it's aligned with certainty. That's what the modern man has lost, not strength, but direction. And without direction, his energy disperses. The more he tries to please everyone, the more invisible he becomes. To restore polarity, you must reawaken the primal, the part of you that acts without asking, that leads without waiting, that protects without hesitation. You must train your body again to move like it means something. You must practice silence until your words carry weight. You must stop apologizing for being decisive. Every sorry you say to avoid tension kills a fragment of your masculine presence. Polarity requires pressure. You have to withstand conflict without flinching, and rejection without shrinking. That's how gravity is built. That's how presence is forged. When a man's polarity returns, so does his respect. The world orbits those who radiate certainty because it's starving for direction. The low-value man dissipates energy. The high-value man condenses it. He doesn't ask for control, he becomes control. If you think the loss of polarity is dangerous, the next sign is fatal, because it's the final stage of collapse, when a man no longer even pretends to lead, when he abandons his mission entirely and accepts comfort as his coffin. The eighth and final sign of a low-value man is the death of mission, the quiet surrender of his reason for existing. It doesn't happen with an explosion. It happens in whispers, one compromise at a time, one postponed dream after another. He stops thinking about legacy and starts thinking about survival. He wakes up not to conquer, but to cope. He tells himself he's content, that peace means stillness, that rest means fulfillment. But it isn't peace, it's resignation. His soul has accepted retirement long before his body ever will. And this is the tragedy, not that he failed, but that he stopped fighting. A man without a mission becomes weightless. His energy dissipates, his decisions blur, and his presence fades. He no longer shapes the world, he's shaped by it. The universe forgets him the moment he forgets his purpose. Purpose is not found, it's forged. It's the byproduct of struggle, pressure, and direction. You discover it not by waiting for signs, but by moving through chaos until clarity forms. The low-value man never learns this. He waits for meaning like a beggar waiting for rain. He believes motivation must precede action, when in truth, it's the other way around. He says things like, "I'm still figuring it out for years," as if confusion were a phase and not a choice. But every day spent without direction is a silent declaration of surrender. Men are not built to drift. The masculine psyche collapses without a challenge to overcome. You take away a man's fight, and you take away his soul. The moment his life becomes purely about comfort, convenience, or escape, he begins to rot. He loses tension, focus, and hunger, all the qualities that once made him dangerous. This is the modern epidemic. Men living lives of quiet sedation. They chase pleasure to fill the absence of meaning. Endless scrolling, endless distraction, endless consumption. They have everything except a reason to wake up. And the irony is that the world has never been safer, never more comfortable, and yet men have never felt more lost. Because safety kills the need for creation. When nothing threatens you, nothing demands your evolution. The low-value man avoids pain, but pain is the forge of significance. The discomfort you avoid becomes the emptiness you live with. The high-value man understands this. He knows suffering isn't punishment, it's instruction. It carves him, shapes him, refines him. He doesn't run from the fire, he builds his identity inside it. Because the man who has a mission can endure anything, the man who doesn't will collapse under everything. The loss of mission also poisons relationships, ambition, and masculinity itself. A man without purpose becomes parasitic. He attaches himself to others, seeking identity through them. He becomes jealous of men with drive, resentful of those with conviction. Instead of building, he critiques. Instead of creating, he consumes. His words become hollow because they carry no trajectory. He tries to fill his void with people, money, distractions, but nothing stays. Because mission is the skeleton of a man's spirit. Without it, he collapses into emotional flesh. Even love becomes distorted when mission dies. He expects his partner to provide the fulfillment that only a purpose can give. But no woman, no friend, no wealth can replace direction. You can't outsource meaning, you must bleed for it. The high-value man, however, never stops building. His mission may evolve, but it never dies. It lives through him like a pulse. It gives him posture, clarity, and power. He wakes not to survive, but to advance. Every day is war, not against others, but against stagnation. He understands that purpose is not comfort, it's confrontation. It's the daily choice to pursue something bigger than yourself, even when no one claps, even when you're tired, even when you doubt. That's what separates the living from the existing. Men who live with mission move differently. Their eyes are sharp, their silence is loud, their presence unsettles the mediocre, because it reminds them of what they've abandoned. The missionless man avoids men like this because their existence exposes his decay. He'll call them obsessed, arrogant, relentless, but secretly, he envies their fire. You can reclaim that fire, but it begins with brutal honesty. Ask yourself, when did you stop chasing meaning and start chasing comfort? When did you trade destiny for distraction? When did you stop building? Because it's not too late to resurrect your mission. It's still inside you, buried beneath fear, laziness, and conformity. You can reignite it by confronting what you avoid. Purpose is born in resistance, not relaxation. Get uncomfortable again. Enter spaces that demand your growth. Create, fight, build, lead. You were not meant to drift, you were meant to direct. When you move toward purpose, even chaos begins to organize around you. Life respects men who choose burden over ease. The mission gives you gravity, and gravity gives you power. The world bends to men who know where they're going. That's the ultimate transformation, from low value to high, from follower to leader, from seeker to sovereign. You stop reacting, you start building, you stop needing validation, you start embodying conviction, you stop obeying, apologizing, and pretending. You become calm, precise, deliberate, a man defined by direction. Because in a world that worships comfort, purpose itself becomes rebellion. And rebellion, when disciplined, becomes power. The man of mission doesn't beg to be seen. The world makes space for him because it must. That's what the low-value man never learns. That power is not taken from others. It's reclaimed from within. If you think losing your mission is harmless, it isn't. It's spiritual death with the appearance of life. But here's the truth. Death can be reversed. All it takes is one moment of disgust, strong enough to make you rise again. One day when you say never again. From that day, everything changes. Because once a man remembers why he was born, the world remembers who he is. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Weakness is not born, it's tolerated. Every time you betray your standards, every time you beg for validation, every time you trade discipline for comfort, you decay. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to rebuild yourself into a man of value? Are you willing to lose approval in exchange for respect? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I rise again. Let's see how many here are truly ready to kill the weakness within. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.